Welcome back to another episode of the Binge Corner Podcast, and it's a very, very, very special one because I have with me Mr. Pat Lane, one of the hosts of the Armchair Superheroes Podcast, which can also be found on BingeCorner.com, and we are going to be talking a lot of Marvel and superheroes. So, Pat, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. It's Thursday, so tomorrow's Friday.
Yeah,
long weekend.
Right.
So it's things are going well.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. It's summertime. It's almost June, surprisingly, and that means that we got some exciting things coming up here in the world of Marvel and any sort of superhero action movies, and we're going to talk a lot about it. Plus, you recently on your show have done two things. You had a character draft, which we're going to talk about here, because I personally think you won the draft, and that's not me sucking up to you. That's me just thinking you.
That's you just being correct.
Exactly. Top two picks. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. We'll discuss why, and then we're also going to discuss about something you did just the other day, and that is the consensus ranking of the 23 MCU movies to this point. So. So first, I want to get into a couple of things that we're obviously getting ready for. June is going to be a pretty big month because we get the third Marvel series coming up, something we've, I'm sure, been anticipating since the end of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Because after WandaVision, we jumped right into the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so we've had several weeks now before the premiere of Loki. Going into all of this, before seeing any of the shows, I was most excited for this one just because, again, I think the whole concept, I love the character of Loki, Tom Hiddleston playing the role, and I just think the story had so much potential. So far, I mean, I think Marvel's 2 for 2, hitting out of the park, these two series, so, the expectations have probably risen for me. But how do you view this series, or at least what are your expectations just based on what you've seen so far? Because I still believe this is, as surprisingly as it's going to be, the best of these three series that we see this summer. Yeah,
I mean, it's at this point, right? It's kind of hard to believe that it could be better than WandaVision because WandaVision was so good.
Yeah, but
I feel the same way. Like going into the summer or going into the start of this in the spring. My thought was, okay, for God's sakes, dude, it's Hiddleston and Loki, and they're going to, be jumping through timelines and doing all these crazy things. Like, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be so much fun. You're going to see a ton of Loki. Like, he was such a great character anyway. So now to get him kind of in a place where he's able to manipulate people, which is what he does best, right, is kind of get himself in a position where he can kind of weasel his way into things and in and out of things, right? So, like, that's what he's been doing for forever in the MCU, right? And so, I just thought this series is going to be great. And then, you saw what they brought to the table with WandaVision, and I thought, Falcon and Winter Soldier had its warts, but like overall was a very good series as well. Now you get Loki, and it's like, oh my God, like we're going to be off and running. And the way they knocked the first two out of the park, I'm even more excited for the Loki series. So I just think that, I mean, we're looking at maybe, one of the best. This run right here is outrageous what they've been able to do these last, if assuming Loki is good, I mean, to do WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and Loki back to back, and have them all be really good to outstanding is unreal. It's nothing like we've ever seen before.
Well, and that's the thing right there. Is like, look, a lot of these releases, maybe not the shows in particular, but a lot of these, moving forward got delayed because of the pandemic. So it gave you a nice, not nice, but there's a very large gap between Endgame and what's happening right now, which is not only a transition in phases, but a real transition in the whole franchise, because, again, you're moving forward without Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man, one of obviously the biggest characters. And then again, presumably without Steve Rogers, obviously in that Captain America persona. Maybe you see him at time to time in some of these other movies or whatever, but I don't think he's going to play any sort of significant role. And if he does, that would be a huge change from everything that we've heard so far. So
Right.
they're getting this next era of I guess Marvel movies. It started with 3 television shows, and the way they're able to do that is they're setting up these big picture ideas. They're putting these storylines in motion and kind of cleaning up a few things that maybe we were wondering about at the, after Endgame and everything, that happened prior to that. So obviously WandaVision, we're, presumably leading into Doctor Strange 2. The idea with Loki is you're kind of going to get a lot of the same thing and potentially leading into that too, because what we know about the show now is that it picks up where he disappears with the Tesseract in the Endgame time shift part of that movie. And from that point on, it's how do you fix these timelines? And you see him in some sort of time jail or whatever, and he's apparently tasked with fixing this problem. And if you remember back to Endgame, when Hulk got the stone from the Ancient One, she kind of described how this worked. If one stone's removed from the timeline, multiple timelines start branching off, and you have this just absolute mess of a situation. And that's kind of what I feel like we're getting here, because, well, the Tesseract, we know, is essentially it's an Infinity Stone. So, so that to me, again, it leads right back into another build up for Doctor Strange 2, which I think is going to be one of the biggest movies in this next phase and era of this run. So that's part of the reason why I'm excited. And then you add in the aspects of the actor and just the character in general. So am I missing anything from that trailer that might be important? Because we haven't got too much, but you're kind of putting the pieces together for that start.
Right. No, I don't think so. I mean, the one thing I'll say is that, this is where you can start to see all these parallel universes. We talk about the multiverse, right? And how essentially these parallel universes are all very similar, right? Mm-hmm. So there's all kind of the same thing that's happening. Well, now Loki gets in here, and he's got the Tesseract, and he doesn't care about anyone, right? So he's kind of doing his own thing. And so, this is now where you can see some of these multiverses, getting into a position where they're in a bad spot because of something that he did or because of something that someone else did or whatever. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they approach that. And so, yeah, sure, you're able to go back in time and kind of replace that stone from where it was. But, what if you aren't? Right? What if you're not? What if you get to, a certain multiverse, let's say, or a certain universe, parallel universe, and then that parallel universe follows you back, right? And so so who knows, right? So they could kind of explore those different things, and I don't know if they will, of course, but it might be a good way to kind of open the multiverse to do it with Loki. And so it's going to be interesting. It's funny because, Black Widow should have already happened. Mm-hmm. Right, so it's kind of tough because Black Widow's in a weird spot because what's her name, Elaine from Seinfeld, Julie Louis-Dreyfus. Yeah. We would have already seen her, right? Yeah. And so that was it was a cameo for us, and we're like, oh my god, that's so cool. And they're like, yeah, well, she's in Black Widow. We would have already seen her in this movie, right? So of course we didn't know that, but now they're in a weird spot because if you open the multiverse with Loki and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, here's Black Widow. And you're like, well, that has nothing to do with anything, but it's just it is what it is, And so, but they're going to have the amount of stuff that they have just until December is outrageous. It's crazy. It's just this thing and boom, 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 boom. And you're oh my God,
This honestly could not have lined up any better for them in terms of okay, obviously, with what's going on in the world, people seem to be far more eager now to head back. Trust me, I am. We talked offline about this, and I said, hey, look, Black Widow is probably going to be my first movie back to the theaters. But think about it. Black Widow, you got Shang-Chi, you got the Eternals, which we just got the first trailer for just the other day. Spider-Man: No Way Home, which we should be getting a trailer for that very soon. And then very early on in 2022 in March, we get Doctor Strange. So, it's it's an exciting time to be getting back into it. And again, the excitement is only getting greater with, how successful these first two programs have been. I mean, obviously WandaVision was just phenomenal. Like you said, I mean, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I mean, it had its, like you said, its warts, and there was some whatever moments, but at the end of the day, the full package that they brought to the table was really good. And it opened up possibilities for the future. And then obviously shortly thereafter, we learned of, the fourth Captain America movie in development. So we know that's obviously going to play into what happened at the tail end of the series, and kind of what Sam goes through moving forward as Captain Falcon, Captain America. I think that's he's going to keep that, obviously, that title of Captain America. And actually, we got a little bit of a excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit here. We got a little bit of a clarification on how that works, by the way. And this is a great transition into that Eternals trailer, because at the very end of it, you see them sitting around a table kind of discussing, and someone calls him Captain Rogers. Which, you're not thinking about it, maybe you don't put too much stock in it, but leading into the question of who's going to lead the Avengers now that Captain Rogers is gone, i.e., he's no longer Captain America. He has done his service as Captain America. That is obviously now Sam Wilson. So you get a little bit of a tidbit there, which I thought that was nice, and I was like, oh, okay, that kind of clears something up. So it kind of opens up the possibility that he could make an appearance as himself and not interfere with any sort of
possible,
Captain America thing. But again, I don't think that's something. I don't see how that organically fits into the story right now. And if Marvel starts, hinging on their stars of movies past, and they just become the WWE, and the Undertaker is still wrestling 35 years after he probably should have retired. Right. But anyways, Eternals. It's I've seen mixed reaction from the trailer. I think some people very much like I've seen it compared to when the Guardians of the Galaxy trailer, the first one, first got released. People were kind of like, okay, I don't get these characters. I don't understand. I don't see how this is going to translate to a big picture movie. I'm intrigued by it. I think the cast is phenomenal. And I mean, this is a group that doesn't get involved in anything and is apparently immortal. So you know what? My interest is piqued. Do you know much about the background of this movie, of these characters at all, or I'm kind of going into it a little bit blind. So
I'm one of those people that I don't want to research it before, because like if I know about something, sure, like fine, but I'd rather not research it and have them tell me the story, because the thing is that, and this is like. So I'm a huge Stephen King fan. I mean, I don't get a chance to read much anymore with 3 kids and a bunch of jobs and podcasts and everything else, but I've read over 50 of his novels, right? And in my opinion, he's the greatest nonfiction writer, perhaps of all time, certainly of our generation. But regardless, his books are phenomenal. His movies are meh, like they're fine, but especially when you compare them to the books, right? Because the books just can't equal the movies, right? And you also can't add anything, right? There's so much you have to take out, and you got to change things. Because like, you're trying to fit a 1,000-page book into a 2-hour movie. You just can't do that, right? So we're in the same situation here. And especially where you're dealing with comic books, where there's, thousands of these comic books that have written, and it's like, okay, we have this story, but then there's this story, and there's that story, and then there's this story, and it's like, they're trying to combine, and what the MCU has done a good job of is combining different storylines from different things, right? And, changing, the Infinity War, saga essentially is like Thanos falls in love with death and like kills people to like woo death. It's like, it's out of this world, right? So then they change it, and they did a great job doing that. But if you love that storyline, you watch the Infinity War and you're like, well, what the hell is this? You know what I mean? Like, so that's one of the things for me where I'm kind of like, you know what? I don't even want, like, let them tell me the story, and I'll kind of go into it like that. That's the way I feel about it, because I'd rather not know. Like you said, the cast looks awesome. And I'd rather, like, I'm just like, you know what? Don't tell me anything. I will say, like, Kumail Pindar from Franklin and Bash is how
Yes,
is
there
how
you
I
go.
remember. Franklin and Bash is one of my like favorite